He didn't just rap about danger, he walked toward it, eyes open, like someone who'd already made peace with the noise. Chicago knew him as Dayvon Bennett. The world called him King Von. His origin was a concrete maze called Parkway Gardens, O-Block, on the south side of Chicago, a name that would follow him onto stages and into headlines. By 2018, he'd turned street play-by-play into national recognition, a vivid, breathless style that broke through with a record called Crazy Story. It wasn't just a song, it was a scene told like a witness statement over drums. 2 years later, October 30th, 2020, he stamped his neighborhood into an album title, Welcome to O-Block, and watched it climb just as fast as his reputation. 1 week after that release, before the momentum could settle, shots cracked the night outside a Hookah lounge in Atlanta. He was too sick. This isn't a story about a headline. It's a story about how a kid from 64th and King Drive turned surveillance-grade detail into art, and why the echo of that night still hangs over drill music today. Dayvon Bennett was born August 9, 1994, in Chicago, raised mostly by his mother in the Parkway Garden homes, O-Block on the south side. The complex sits along the 6,300 to 6,500 blocks of South King Drive and became nationally known through drill culture. His father, Walter E. Bennett, drifted in and out of his life due to incarcerations. When Vaughn was 11, his father was killed, a loss he later memorialized in music. The absence hardened him early, and the neighborhood's reality sharpened that edge. O-Block wasn't just a backdrop, it was pressure. By the early 2010s, the area had a reputation for relentless violence. Chicago reporting labeled the 6,400 block of King Drive O-Block one of the city's most dangerous stretches. At 16, Vaughn was sent to juvenile detention for an armed robbery in January 2011. Inside, he earned his GED, an early sign that he could lock in when it mattered. After release, he briefly attended classes at South Suburban College, but the pull of the street kept calling.
But I got my GED while I was locked up in boot camp. They let you get I went to school and got the GED. Now I was out when I got out of boot camp. I went to community college. I went to South Suburban, little community college out there in Chicago and shit. Okay. South suburbs.
In July 2014, he was charged with 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder, then held in Cook County Jail for over 3 years. In December 2017, the case ended in acquittal, and he walked out with time behind him and a story to tell. Weeks later, he tightened his link with Lil Durk and signed to Only the Family. What came next would turn Vaughn's breathless corner stories into records that traveled far beyond 64th and King Drive. The first real spark wasn't a headline or a cosign. It was a story told over a cold, stalking beat 2.5 minutes that felt like you were peeking through blinds. On December 6, 2018, Crazy Story dropped, and it moved like a rumor with proof. Vaughn's voice didn't just rap, it recreated. The song crept onto charts and into millions of timelines, turning a local name into a national problem. He followed that momentum with Grandson, Volume 1, September 20th, 2019, a debut mixtape that played like case files set to drums. Lil Durk appeared, but Vaughn was the center of gravity, building scenes with a witness's eye and a novelist's pace. The tape cracked the Billboard 200 and told the industry something simple. This wasn't luck, it was method. Then came Levon James on March 6, 2020. Sharper, colder, bigger. Features from G Herbo, NLE Choppa, T Grizzly, and more gave the project a traveling feel. But the storytelling stayed home. Chicago angles, Chicago stakes. Vaughn was now a specialist. He didn't chase club records. He made street cinema and let the crowd come to him. The single that truly broke through mainstream barriers was Took Her to the O. It was pure Vaughn, brisk, detailed, and narrative with twists that felt like a short film. Released February 21, 2020, it climbed into the Hot 100 and sat there like a dare to the rest of Raptel, a tighter story. By fall, he was ready to plant the flag. Welcome to O-Block arrived, October 30th, 2020, an album named after the place that shaped him. With production from Chop Squad DJ and appearances by Polo G, Lil Durk, Moneybagg Yo, Fevio Foreign, and more. It was his cleanest statement of purpose, not just where he was from, but what it meant. Reviewers heard the menace and the motion. Fans heard home. In its first week, the album moved steadily. The next week, after Tragedy, it surged into the top 5 on the Billboard 200, a grim confirmation of how fast fame and fate can collide. Even in Ascent, the music felt like surveillance footage, Unblinking, unhurried, undeniable. The turning point was here. The rooms were bigger, the stakes heavier, and the stories louder. But momentum has a shadow. When you move this fast, something is always trying to catch up. The night started like a celebration album out, city buzzing. A young star finally moving rooms that once felt locked. But at 2 a.m. in downtown Atlanta, momentum met history. Outside Monaco Hookah Lounge, to Cruz Von's Circle and Associates. Of Quando Rando collapsed the distance from words to fists to gunfire in seconds. Off-duty Atlanta police working security moved in as shots rang. The chaos was fast, blinding, irreversible. By sunrise on November 6, 2020, authorities confirmed what fans were already whispering through shaky live streams and group chats. King Von was dead at 26. Another Chicago man, 34-year-old Mark Blakely, also died, and several others were wounded. The state said APD would handle the homicide probe. The GBI would review officers' use of force. In an instant, the promise of Welcome to O Block turned into a headline that felt like a sucker punch. Within days, a suspect emerged. While being treated for a gunshot wound, 22-year-old Timothy Lultim Leaks was taken into custody on a felony murder charge in Von's death. To the internet, it looked like the beginning of a case. To the streets, it looked like another chapter in a feud with too many authors. But the case didn't move like a movie. In August 2023, prosecutors dismissed the murder charge against Leaks Never, presenting the case to a grand jury. His attorney cited self-defense principles in Georgia's Stand Your Ground law as the anchor of the dismissal. For fans waiting on a courtroom final act, there wasn't one, just paperwork and a wound that never closed. There was also an older shadow trailing Von into that night, a separate 2019 shooting near Atlanta's Varsity Restaurant, a case in which he and Lil Durk were co-defendants. Von died with those charges unresolved. 2 years later, prosecutors dropped the case against Durk in the interest of justice, ending that legal thread. None of it brought the music back, but it clarified one thing: the story wouldn't be settled in court. It would be settled in what people remembered when the songs came on. His last week alive told the cruel joke of timing. Welcome to O Block landed October 30th, 2020, his sharpest writing, his cleanest production, the full weight of Chicago storytelling, polished but not softened. Then the bullets, then the tributes, then the charts moving the way grief does, sudden and disorienting. Careers usually fade. Von's crashed, not because he ran out of story, but because the life that gave him a voice was the same life that could take it away. And when it did, the silence felt louder than the records. The shock didn't stop the records. 1 week after Welcome to a Block dropped, those same songs became memorials. The album rose into the Billboard 200's top 5, his highest placement in life or death, and turned a neighborhood name into a national headline. In March 2022, the estate released What It Means to Be King. It arrived with the weight of unfinished plans and opened at No. 2 on the Billboard 200, about 59,000 units in week 1. Mostly from streams, proof that Von's voice could still command a crowd even after the room went quiet. The single Don't Play That with 21 Savage pushed him into the Hot 100's top 40, a chart milestone he'd never see. A year later, Grandson carried the story forward, a posthumous project that played like a letter from a paused life. It landed in the Billboard 200's top 20 and kept his themes intact: timing, trust, payback, fate. The cover, his son styled as a young Von, underlined what the music had always hinted at. Legacy isn't abstract. It has a face. Back home, the tributes were made of paint and brick. A mural went up near Parkway Gardens, O Block's outer wall becoming a shrine for tourists and neighbors who queued for photos, arguments, and prayers. Over time, it became a point of tension, debated by police, praised by fans, vandalized and repaired. Eventually removed, then reborn elsewhere. Even the wall couldn't agree on what to do with him. In Atlanta, the law moved in half steps. Officials confirmed Von's death the morning after the shooting. Months later, a suspect, Timothy Tim Leaks, was charged, only for prosecutors to dismiss that murder case in 2023. No grand narrative in the courtroom, just an official ending with no clear moral. What remains are the records. Crazy Story taught an audience that drill could feel like a police report recited over hi-hats. Took Her to the O showed the form at full speed, and both turned into canon for a new generation, trying to write like they'd seen the whole scene. The numbers proved reach, the style proved influence, and the neighborhood he stamped onto the map, 64th and King Drive, keeps arguing with his memory. Was he a cautionary tale or a folk hero who translated the block for the world? Maybe both. Maybe that's the point. The stories outlived the storyteller, and the echo became the legacy.